think we'll just go ahead and start at this point. We're close enough to 7. All right. So this is going to be an intro to Burp Suite. Has anyone actually heard of Burp Suite before now? Okay, decent number, but I figured a lot of people probably wouldn't. First off, I'm Garrett Rose. That's my LinkedIn. I'm on Discord. You'll see me in the list of prior leadership and all that. I used to be an officer for this group, and then I graduated, so I can't be anymore. But I still do a lot of stuff like this. So anyone can reach out with questions, whatever they want. So basic agenda, what we're going to talk about, what Burp Suite is, why it's useful, how it actually works, and I'll do more of a visual demo, and people can ask questions, see more specific things that they wonder about, because there's a lot to this tool, and I can only cover so much in an intro kind of thing. But yeah. So what is the tool? Why is it called Burp? I have no clue why it's called Burp. It's a funny name. I've kind of just left that a mystery for myself. Someone could Google it, but I don't know. What it is, it's basically just a proxy for web requests. So you set it up so that you send any kind of a web request. That could be submitting something in a login form, just clicking a link, whatever. Burp will capture that request and optionally hold it in place so that you can analyze it, modify it, do whatever you want with that request before sending it off to its intended destination. This allows, you can do all kinds of things with this, whether it's just kind of debugging a website, checking for vulnerabilities, or actually attacking it. So we're going to see a lot of those different kind of use cases here. That looks really complicated. That is a web request. That is literally just a Google search of the term example search. And this looks really intimidating, but once we actually get into the demo part and stuff like that, you'll see this is pretty easy to modify and work with. This is, I'm not sure what else to say about that. It's just a web request. So why is this actually useful for pen testing, security, whatever? In general, checking web apps for vulnerabilities is kind of the whole point here. You can do dictionary attacks on login forms. You can use it to help you with SQL injection attacks. You can just test some modified or intentionally malformed requests to see if the website you're on gives you some kind of weird unintended results, because that can lead to some useful information too. And a very common one that I've seen in CTFs that I think is really fun, bypassing file type restrictions on uploads. Classic thing where some upload form says, oh, you can only send or upload an image, but you do some weird request modification and suddenly you can get some script of your own to run. And that's like a lot of little challenge boxes will use that. But this Burp Suite as a whole is extremely valuable for both CTFs, competitions, things like that, but also real-world web app pen testing. It's definitely one of the tools that KSU kind of neglects to ever mention or teach you about in, at least in my case, the cybersecurity degree. Literally never even mentioned it. So that's why I want to get people introduced to this early on, because it really is useful. It can definitely be asked about in technical interviews. I had an interview for a pen testing internship like a year and a half ago, something like that. And I think at the time, my resume said something about having used Burp before. I should have been more up to date on it at that time than I was, because they saw that and they were like, oh, we use that all the time. I'm gonna ask you some questions about that, because we'd love to see that you can actually use it. I answered some questions decently, others definitely could have been better, but point is, it is a real world tool. This is extremely good to know if you're gonna do anything on the web app side of cybersecurity. So, actually, before I talk about anything further, are there any questions about just the, what is Burp Suite side of things, just the high level, before I get into more of showing what it actually is or how it works? David.
Burp Suite cost any money?
No, it is, well, okay, there is a professional version. You can pay for it. And it does, there's a couple features that are locked behind the premium version. Generally, they're not things that you're going to absolutely need to use for day-to-day use cases. And I believe the free version gets rate limited a little bit on like brute force attacks or the intruder module. But still, for like CTFs and stuff, it's not a big enough difference to really matter for anyone. It's not a big deal. But, Aiden?
I just wanted to add that you were right on point to not look up what burp means because it literally means nothing.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the creator said he just made it. He's like, I wanted to call it burp. So you were
Cool.
right on. You were right on point.
It was more
actually.
fun to not know.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Ruining the fun.
Yeah.
Now there's no experience behind calling it Burp Suite. It's just
Yeah.
It's lost its luster.
right.
I don't know why, but I think that's better. I think it's better to. He was just like burp.
It's a matter of perspective, I guess.
What do you want to call your child product? Like burp.
Burp. Anyway. Tom.
I was going to add real quick on the enterprise side. For your companies that you have to go work with, that you go work for, is really archiving is a big benefit of that, and being able to keep it in a unified solution and doing concurrent scans from the same system.
True.
Without spending up additional VMs, right? Just helps out, 'cause that was our big issue, is being able to maintain the scans in a easy format that kept up to date versus having to reevaluate everything.
Yeah.
But it does cost some money in the enterprise, but there are, the other, I think there's a pro version as well, that's really
Right.
good. But the free version is great as well, so.
Yeah. On the archiving point, big thing with the free version is you can't actually save projects to come back to later. That's probably the most annoying part about it. Everything else, it's like, whatever, you can get by without it, but, you kind of just have to keep that window open all the time as long as you're using that project. But, trade-offs of having good free software sometimes, I guess. I don't know.
Freemium.
David.
Also, for all of you who are curious about the man back there who is giving some wonderfully good insight into Burp Suite, that is Thomas Butterworth. He works for cybersecurity for KSU.
Yeah.
So, pretty knowledgeable about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of trial and errors. So.
Yep. He shows up like once a month,
Yeah,
roughly.
once a month.
Yeah. And yeah,
a long
very good
trainer.
resource if you have questions. Just
I know, right?
I'm sending everyone to barrage you, but
No, really.
there you go.
Seriously, hit me up on email teams. If you're a student, you can literally search my name, Thomas Butterworth, and it'll populate.
Seriously.
Or LinkedIn. Or Facebook.
True.
Seriously, he's a cool guy.
All right. That everything. Okay, cool. So, this is just a basic overview of the UI. When you first open up a Burp project, this is what you see. And this main dashboard, it's not that intimidating. It's like a few panels, but the main intimidating thing you probably immediately notice is there are, I think, 13 tabs along the top for different modules. That is a lot, obviously, which is why the next slide is the many tabs. So while there are a lot, it is nice. The whole point of that is that everything within this suite, Burp Suite, is broken up into individual modules that serve a very distinct purpose. So you can kind of just go through and learn each module one at a time. You're not gonna, there's not a single one of these that is like super reliant on another one. So you can just kind of go one at a time. The most commonly used ones, at least in my experience so far, Target is just where you keep track of the URLs that you've gone through, and in the case of, especially if you were doing like a real pen test with this, you can limit the scope of what Burp will actually capture from your browser. So if your scope for an actual pen test says you're allowed to test this set of domains, you can put that set of domains into your scope, tell Burp, ignore everything else, and it will only look at those, and you're not going to worry about breaking your rules of engagement or something. The proxy, that's kind of going to be your main thing. That is where you actually can turn on the intercept for web requests. So once something is caught, it shows up in that window, and you can, I mean, that screenshot from before of the big web request of a Google search, that is where you would see that. And you kind of send it off to other modules and make modifications from there. Intruder, that's one we're going to look at in the actual demo later. That one allows you to send the same web request over and over and over and over again, and it automatically makes certain changes based on rules or a word list or something like that that you specified. Repeater, very similar idea. You send the same thing over and over again, but it's where you manually make the changes each time, so it's just slightly different use cases. Not as commonly used, definitely still useful, at least in my experience, I don't use them as much. Sequencer, that lets you grab a bunch of tokens. A lot of websites will generate some kind of random token for security purposes, and it kind of just repeatedly makes the website generate a new one, and it just grabs a huge data set, and then you can analyze those to see if they're truly random, because if they're not, you can probably break it. Decoder, that's more of a little utility thing. You can just encode or decode text. You can URL encode, hex, base64. They've got probably 5 or 6 other options if I remember right. That's just kind of nice because then you don't have to go to some other website to do that for you. It's just right there in the program. Comparer, that just, as the name says, compares 2 bodies of text. It highlights differences. It's kind of nice if there are subtle differences between responses that you don't immediately catch and kind of make sure you see the differences. And Organizer, that one is it organizes things. If there's a request that was interesting, you send it to the organizer and it just hangs on to it there, and you can put notes on it, come back to it later, do whatever you want to do. So proxy, repeater, and intruder, those really are your best friends in CTFs if you're doing web app challenges. As I said before, with the proxy, you capture a single request, analyze that request to understand what the web app is actually doing. Generally, that's kind of the idea. And you can make quick little one-off changes to the request. That's more if you don't have a bunch of automated stuff you need to do. So you're just kind of checking one thing, do that. Repeater, that's you want to try a bunch of kind of ideas you have for what might break a web app or make it do something you want. And you just want to tweak it each time manually, use the repeater. Intruder, like I said, that's good for automatically making changes on a bunch of attempts really fast. It just returns a big list of all the responses as it goes, and you can look at each of them and see if it has anything of interest. That is a lot of words and nothing visual so far. So that is why we're going to actually look at how this works. Make sure oh wait, that's not how I want to open that. Hang on. That's how I want to open that. So this will cover pretty much all the parts that I already talked about so far. We're going to see using the proxy feature, intercepting requests. We're going to see using the intruder module primarily. And I would say from there, as I'm going, or afterwards, whatever, if there are any questions, you don't need to wait till the end. Throw out questions as I go. If there's anything I've said so far that is kind of confusing that you want to see an example of, I can try to kind of fit it into the flow of this or just show it afterwards or whatever. But the point is to let you guys actually, see how this thing works. Yeah, I should probably point the camera at myself now. There we go. Currently loading. Okay, cool. This is the thing. So the idea on this lab, and I am going to talk about what this website is later because this is from the creators of Burp Suite. This lab is here's this website that, it kind of just looks like a blog. There's a bunch of different posts about 10 completely unrelated things, but it's a blog. And I believe over here they kind of just tell you the point is to enumerate usernames and passwords, and that's kind of all they tell you. The goal is to use Burp Suite to solve this. So the idea is, of course, we go to the login page. What are you laughing about? Okay. And like, you know, we try to log in, nothing. Still nothing. It just says invalid username, but that is useful information right there. So I guess a good way to start demonstrating how Burp Suite actually works here, we're gonna go in here. This is the nice thing with Burp Suite. It actually has a built-in Chrome-based browser that you can just pop open, and it's automatically hooked up, so you don't have to do a whole weird configuration.
Can you change it to be a non-Chromium browser?
You can, as long as you just configure like
Just in the settings?
yeah, proxy settings to point to your instance of Burp Suite, you're good. But you know, that can be annoying, and when you just want to do something quick and easy, it's right here. So let me go to this is
Yeah,
proxy.
I have to use Chrome.
Immediately it's grabbing something, but we're gonna ignore that. Let's do a test. So this is why when you know it's working. Your browser looks like it's just hanging and doing nothing. Because, I mean, it is, because Burp is holding on to that request and not sending it through. So let's get rid of that one. This is our request that we just made. So we can see we sent a request to the login endpoint, and down here, this is the important part. It says what the username is that we're sending and the password that we're sending. So, I mean, if we want, we can just like modify the request itself and, you know, forward it along, and sure, that works, but it doesn't really do anything for us. I don't know why it keeps picking up all these weird
Maybe
extra
ABS.
requests. No, they're from the browser.
Oh.
I just never did that when I've tested this before. But regardless, this is where we're going to see the value of the intruder module. Let's see, where did that log? I'm just going to send a new one because I lost it. Alright, so we have this, and this is the really nice thing with Burp. On any web request you get in the proxy window here, you right click and you can just send it to these other modules to do something with them. In this case, you know, we're told that we want to find usernames and passwords, so the choice that makes sense would be intruder, because that's what lets us keep trying a bunch of things over and over again automatically. Now it's in the intruder. So, you know, this kind of, I mean, it's a pretty simple UI overall. It's telling us we can choose different attack types. Sniper just says, you know, take the next word in our word list, send it, if that, or well, regardless of whether it works, just, you know, kind of keep going down the list and sending those shots. I believe they provide a word list for us to use here. Yeah, we'll get both of those. Yo, Evan made it.
I think your thing's getting interrupted.
My thing's getting interrupted?
Like,
Yeah,
you're not
'cause
gonna
they're
load
catching
because
them.
That is a great point, David. I'm intercepting my own.
yeah.
Yep, here we go.
Double-edged sword.
So, real world, you probably wouldn't just have a list like this. I guess in some real world pen tests, a company might give you a list of users to try, but
You might have your own word list that you use, that you
or that,
curate.
yeah.
Trying to brute force.
So, let's see, we're gonna do, where did this button, okay, there it is, it was covered. So, you can just hit paste and it fills in this word list that we got. And they make this pretty easy. In our case, first, we're trying to find valid usernames. That is the first step. You literally just highlight the username in the request. So test down there. Let's see if I can actually, does it not let me enlarge that? Is it, yeah, Yeah, can't zoom on that, that's annoying. But you can hit this, add whatever that symbol is, and anything between those symbols, it will replace on each attempt with something out of our word list here. And that is literally the entire setup for this. We can just hit start attack, and it warns you that you have the free version, so it can't do as much. Here we go. So we can see it's going through, it's attempting every one of those. You get a status code and the length of the response. Those are kind of the main things to look at here. If you remember from when we first tried logging into that login form with just test, username and password test, it said invalid username. So already you have the case where it's showing an error message of some kind that reveals more information than it should, because it should not tell you if you found a usable username, one that actually exists. But based on that, we know that whenever it hits something that is a valid username, it's probably not going to say that anymore, which means the length of the response is going to be different. So right now we're kind of just waiting for it to hit that username that has a different length, and it will be somewhere else. David?
Something to also check on with what Garrett's saying. In this case, it would be fine, but for competitions, almost any competition you would be a part of, you are explicitly not allowed to brute force the problems. All the problems are always made with the idea that there is a method or idea behind solving it that doesn't require you just endlessly throwing random guesses at it until you find it.
Right.
Whether there's a clue or hint that's hidden in the software, or you're just not thinking about it at the right angle. In this case, this would be perfectly fine because you have a predetermined word list that not only was pre-approved by the competition holders, but it's also, not brute force in the sense of you're randomly generating names to try and use.
So I kind of want to add on to that real quick. Can you go back to while we're waiting for this to load, can you go back to the other screen real quick? I just realized this.
Oh, this?
No, the where you set up the attack.
Oh, on the intruder.
On the intruder.
Yeah.
I just noticed the number of names are 101. The reason why, after 100 attempts on intruder, that's where Burp Suite does its rate limiting.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So every 100, for anybody, what I'm saying is, with the free version of Burp Suite, it's going to run at full speed for 100 attempts, and then after 100 attempts, it's going to delay it, and it's going to do it slowly. So I was just noticing that's why there's 100.
Ooh, we got a hit.
I wonder if it changes every time I launch this, because that's not what it was last time. Anyway, in this case, it's a difference of only 2 bytes on the length of the response. It went from 3248 to 3250, but that tells us we got a different response. All right, so let me see. Payload is literally just as. So we can test that if we do as and then a random thing. Look at that, incorrect password. So it tells us we have a valid username for sure. Now, we kind of just repeat the exact same thing here. That attack is done running, and we can pop over here, clear that out, username as, set the password to be the new field we test, and we should have another separate word list for passwords, Paste that in. And crazy, we hit start attack again and let that do its thing. I think we need to go into this one. Same idea, this is just gonna sit and run and we'll see a different, I believe it should be the length that's different again. Joey?
I noticed you were getting this lab through Foursquare. Is this a free lab that all of us can do, or how did you get access to this?
It is free, and once I finish this part, literally the next slide is going to be going over resources, because watching someone do a thing only teaches you so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is going to be one of the best resources you can use to learn just an insane amount about Burp Suite and tons of different use cases.
But it looks like we've,
Yeah. Good job padding for time. Thank you.
Cheese.
So yeah, it landed on cheese. In this case, it actually was, well, the length is different. It's only 184 bytes. But also the response code, instead of just a 200 OK, it was a 302. But if we test that, cheese, it loads in. You're in the account, you solve the lab. And that is, thank you. That is the whole thing. That is a very, very basic lab, very basic application of Intruder. But honestly, it doesn't get a whole lot more complicated than that because, okay, you might have some huge word list instead of just 100 things you pasted in. It's still going to run the exact same way. You're still going to select, what part of the request you want the intruder to repeatedly replace on its own, like we did right here. You'll just have a bigger word list and it'll take longer. And there are other attack types, but we're not going to dive into that much detail right now. Yeah, all three of these are the main things that I've used. The Portswigger Web Security Academy, that's what we were just on, that's what had that lab. It is absolutely insane that that thing even exists for, Burp Suite, like we said, is not open source. It's not entirely free, but this Web Academy that they offer is 100% free. And it's not just a few very basic intro level labs for the different modules or different use cases. They have everything broken up into, I believe they call it apprentice and practitioner levels, which is just easy and hard basically. Anything apprentice level, you'll be able to kind of figure out pretty quick, or it doesn't take that long to learn what you need to learn in order to do it. The practitioner ones get to where you are doing things you would probably see in the real world, and it's genuinely challenging. That whole thing's free. They will cover, I think they break it up into different categories for just different types of attacks. It will talk about using Burp Suite for SQL injection, cross-site scripting, things we just did with login forms, probably 25 other things that I'm not going to think of right now. If you're going to use any of those, use that one. It's insane. It's amazing. Second one, try Hack Me Burp Suite module. I think that was where I first learned how to use Burp Suite at all. It's Try Hack Me. I think everyone has heard of it at this point. It's good. That's a good module. I would use it. And that should be a free one. Hack the Box Academy, the using web proxies one. I think at some point I started that one. I didn't actually finish it, but looking through it again, it looks pretty good. It covers all the important basics, kind of gets you up to speed, lets you practice it hands-on. So you can't really go wrong with that either. But the more you know, go use it. That's all I can really say at this point. I've shown you the basics. That only does so much. The best thing you can do is actually go and practice with it. Again, KSU degrees generally are not going to have you practicing this thing, or most tools. Get the hands-on experience for yourself. Use resources that are available to you to, find ways to practice it. And that's what's going to actually prepare you for competitions or real-world pen testing, real-world defense, whatever it is. So, yeah, Burp Suite. There you go. Thank you. And I need to end that recording.
No, just keep
Yeah.
recording yourself. Feel like
Hi.
you're still